Good morning. Today's day 85, and today's video, I'm going to talk about something that is going to be triggering and really hard for a lot of people, and that is about sex abuse and specifically sexual abuse of children. So when I was in prison in Soledad last night with Empathy in Action, at the end, one of the guys asked, there was everyone to stand up. So there were 60 incarcerated men and about 30 volunteers, so 90 people. And then he asked anyone who has not been sexually assaulted to sit down. And of those 90 people, there were about 10 people that sat down, and I am one of them because I've not been sexually assaulted. And so I am going to speak from that perspective. But to think now, on the one hand, it's not surprising because you're talking about a prison population. And when I sit in circles with the brothers, if there's 8 incarcerated men, probably 5 of them have been sexually abused as children. It's so common. When you go in for the, and learn the reality, the school to prison pipeline isn't just something, that's made up. This is lived reality. But of this, this was also volunteers. So many of the volunteers had already been sexually abused. So thinking about that, we like to think of sexual abuse as the outlier, as something that's rare or horrific, especially child sexual abuse. If there's one group of people in our society that is vilified more than anyone, it's people who commit sexual abuse against children. And I know from talking with people how hard this is, and what a horrific, it is a horrific crime. And I am not saying that it's not. But for us, we are, especially at this moment in our history, we are so willing to vilify other people. We are willing to justify sending people to a horrific prison in El Salvador, even if they aren't guilty, because we got to punish those bad people. Punishment is so much a part of our culture and rising right now even more. I mean, I think that punishment and fear of being punished and fear of being out identified is just so on the rise, and people are rightly afraid. So this is a chance for all of us to examine ourselves. So the story that you hear is that child abusers and pedophiles cannot be cured. It's great that we've got Megan's Law, and that's really going to keep us safe. So I just decided to, when I have a question that, I turn to ChatGPT AI. So I'm going to just read some of the things that ChatGPT thinks, because I wanted to know, what do the studies show? I know what people believe, but what do the studies show? So I'm going to just read some of this and just give some thought about your assumptions. Recidivism rates are lower than commonly believed. Contrary to popular belief, child sex offenders have relatively low sexual recidivism rates compared to other types of criminal. The average sexual recidivism rate for child molesters are around 10 to 15% over 5 years and about 20% over 15 to 20 years, depending on the population and type of offense. These rates are lower than for non-sexual violent offenders or for those convicted of property crimes. The risk factors may vary. Sexual offending is not a one-size-fits-all categories. There's victim, intrafamilial and extrafamiliar, age of the offender, use of violence, personality disorders, and substance abuse all contribute to the risk of reoffending. For example, incest offenders tend to have lower reoffense rates than those who offend against unrelated children. And treatment can be effective. Specialized programs like cognitive behavioral therapy, often delivered in group settings or residential programs, have shown significant reductions in reoffending. A 2009 meta-analysis showed treated offenders had a 5 to 8% lower recidivism rate than untreated offenders. Program focused on risks, needs, and responsivity principles have had the most success. They can't help themselves is only partly true. Some individuals experience persistent sexual attraction to children, and our media, encourages this, and our movies as well, with the sexualization of children. That's a psychiatric condition. And not all people with this attraction offend, and not all who offend children are pedophiles. Some act due to power, opportunity, substance use, or situational factors. And there are preventative projects, like in Germany with the Dunkelfeld, that they're actually dealing with offenders with people who have that sexual leaning before they offend, so that they never become offender. So while it's understandable why society views these individuals with such hostility, the data does not support the idea that all child sex offenders are inevitably going to offend again. Many can be rehabilitated, especially when caught early and provided with appropriate interventions. Public policy based solely on fear may ignore evidence-based tools that can actually prevent future harm. And so this is going to be a long video. I'm also going to talk about sex offender registries. And, this is Megan's Law, and you see all the time that you can look up anyone, and if they've been a sex offender, there's protests, and we don't want that person living in our neighborhood. So again, from ChatGPT, there's no consistent evidence that public registries reduce sexual recidivism. Some studies show slight deterrent effects, but others show no effect or even an increase in risk due to stigma and instability. Private law enforcement registries are much more useful for tracking high-risk individuals. Why it can backfire. Public registries can make it hard to get housing, jobs, or social support, factors that are crucial for preventing reoffending. This social isolation can increase stress, resentment, or hopelessness, which can actually raise the risk. The residency restrictions, these laws prohibit people on the sex offender registry from living within a certain distance of schools, parks, or other places children gather. What the evidence says. No credible research supports the idea that these restrictions reduce child sexual abuse. Most child sexual abuse is committed by someone who already knows the child, family member, friend, coach, not a stranger in the park. And the harmful side effects leads to housing instability or homelessness, especially in urban areas where almost all locations are near schools or park. And it makes it harder to supervise or track individuals, as they may disappear from the systems altogether. So finally, civil commitment and lifetime monitoring. Some jurisdictions use civil commitment, locking people up in mental health facilities, or monitoring. So it says that these have mixed results and that they can be expensive, but the more effective approach is risk-based systems. Not all offenders are the same. And this is the thing, someone you look up, that they're a sex offender, and you don't know the details of what happened and what has happened to that person since, what kind of help, what kind of transformation they have made. Support and supervision. Programs like Circles of Support and Accountability pair high-risk offenders with trained community volunteers and have shown very low reoffense rates. Access to treatment before it occurs, that happens in Germany. So just to finish up, laws focused on public shaming and exclusion tend to satisfy the public emotionally, but don't reliably make communities safer. And I'm going to just say that again. Laws focused on public shaming and exclusion, and you can take this beyond, sex offenders. Shaming and exclusion satisfy the public emotionally, but they don't reliably make communities safer. What does help is early intervention, stable reintegration, individualized risk management, and access to mental health care. So that is what ChatGPT has to say. And I know that this is a triggering topic. And again, I'm just speaking as an individual who has not been sexually assaulted, who does not have children. But I do believe in the humanity of everyone, and that we are at a time right now of so much othering and hate, and thinking that it's okay to torture people. If we consider someone a bad person, it's okay to torture them and to put them in horrendous, living conditions like this El Salvadorian prison because they deserve it. So, I mean, we are very much a society that judges on good and bad. Our movies, have the evil bad person, and we're all supposed to cheer when that person is killed. So just an opportunity to rethink, because I've always heard that, sex offenders can't, they can't be rehabilitated. They're just a danger to society. And I want to believe what Brian Stevenson says, which is that we should not be judged by the worst thing that we've ever done. So this is Juju, definitely unfiltered, unscripted, and unedited, with a heavy heart, because this is a problem in our society, and it's a very common problem. And I think because of the shame, we don't talk about it. And I think that is a lot of the problem. So lead with love.